Yes! Okay, this should work. Hello, everyone! I am back! Oh my god, I haven't done this in, what, a year? Man, I am happy to be live streaming again. Hi, Bunny! Great to see you! Wrong account. Happy you got the right one now. Oh, man. It's good to be back. And I'm so happy to do this again, to make some time to stream. I really want to keep doing this. And I have plans to stream more this year. I have good intentions to do it more often. So yeah, we're gonna see. We're at least going to start off with Dracula for today. So it's been a while since I've narrated a chapter from it. So I hope you all, don't mind if I narrate it from where we left off. Chapter 3, I know we didn't get very far into the story. But hey, it's fine. Stuff happens, but I really want to try to do this and keep it up and see if, we can do it more often. Now. Alright, let's see. Chapter 3. Jonathan Harker's Journal. Continued. When I found that I was a prisoner, a sort of wild feeling came over me. I rushed up and down the stairs, trying every door, peering out of every window. I could find, but after a little of conviction of my helplessness, overpowered all other feelings. When I look back after a few hours, I think I must have been mad for the time, for I behaved much as a rat does in a trap. When, however, the conviction had come to me that I was helpless, I sat down quietly as I have ever done anything in my life, and began to think over what the best to be done. I'm thinking still, and as yet have come to the fine conclusion. Of one thing only am I certain, that is, no use making my ideas known to the Count. He knows well that I'm imprisoned, and as he has done it himself, and has doubtless his own motivations of it. He would only deceive me, if I trusted him fully with the facts. So far as I can see, my only plan will be to keep my knowledge from my fears to myself, and my eyes open. I am, I know, either being deceived like a baby by my own fears, or else I am desperate straits. And if the latter be so, I need, and shall need, all my brains to get through. I hardly came to this conclusion when I heard the great door below shut, and knew that the Count had returned. He did not know once to the library, so I went cautiously to my own room, and found him making the bed. This was odd, but only confirmed what I had all along thought, that there were no servants in the house. When later I saw him through the chink of the hinges of the door, laying the table in the dining room, I was assured of it. For if he does himself all of these menial offices, surely it is proof that there is no one else to do them. This gave me a fright, for if there is no one else within the castle, it must have been the Count himself who was the driver of the coach that brought me here. This is a terrible thought, for, if so, What does it mean that he could control the wolves? As he did, by only holding up the hand in silence. How was it that all the people at Bistritz and the coach had some terrible fear for me? What meant and giving the crucifix of the garlic, of the wild rose, of the mountain ash? Bless that good woman who hung the crucifix around my neck, for its comfort and strength to me, whenever I touch it. It is odd that a thing which I have thought to be regard with disfavor and idolatrous should in a time of loneliness and trouble be of help. Is it that there is something in the essence of the thing itself, and that is a medium, a tangible help, and conveying memories of sympathy, of comfort? Sometime, if it may be, I must examine this matter to try to make up the mind about it. In the meantime, I must find out all I can about the Count Dracula, as it may help me to understand. Tonight he may talk to himself. If I turn the conversation that way, I must be very careful, however, not to awake his suspicion. Midnight. I've had a long talk with the Count. I asked him a few questions on Transylvania history, and he warmed me up about the and he warmed up to the subject wonderfully. In his speaking of things and people, and especially of battles, he spoke as if it had been present at him. This he afterwards explained by saying that to a boyar in pride of his house and name his own pride, that they glory of his glory, and their fate is his fate. Whenever he spoke of his house, he'd always say, "we," and spoke almost in the plural, like a king speaking. I wish I could put down all he said exactly as he said it, for, to me, it was most fascinating. It seemed to have in a whole history of the country. He grew excited as he spoke, and the screen... I did not know that it was still on starting soon. But thank you. I downloaded the new version of Streamlabs. Oh my god. I now have to push a button called transition in order for it to go from A to B. Usually I would just push one of the buttons on the top and it would just automatically do it. I've been narrating for like, what, 5 minutes or so? Oh, I am so sorry. I am so incredibly sorry for this. We are 10 minutes into the stream and only now, is my face visible, isn't it? At least I hope it is. Oh my god, no, Bunny, you even texted me to tell me. There you go. Ah! Oh my god, it wouldn't be a stream from the castle if it wasn't this chaotic. I believe something goes wrong every time I start a stream. Even though it's once in a blue moon, something shitty happens, one way or another. Before I restart with narrating, hello, how's everyone doing? I brought you, I can see it, hey, that's great. I brought you all a nice fireplace. I hope you all hear it crackling with, a little bit of ASMR noises aside from the music. This is also something that I brought with me during the, what's it called? Live narrations at AnimeCon. So I thought this was fun, like something I can keep, because I'm narrating from a book, so otherwise you can't see anything other than my beautiful model. Something that my wonderful sister has rigged for me. Very happy it got an upgrade, so the mouth and everything should be working a little bit better now. A bit more smooth. I'm very pleased with it. I'm also thinking that this is probably the first time I'm using her again after it got an upgrade. So it took a while, but I'm using it now. Ah! Oh, damn. Oh my god. Well, I guess I'm starting over again. Oh, let's see, how many... Oh, then that's gonna be fine. That's gonna be fine. Yeah. As long as you guys can hear me talk and the music isn't louder than, my voice, everything is... The rest of it is fine, Yeah. Good, so where did I... Yes. Chapter 3, trying this again. Audio is fine to me. Great! Good to hear. Good to hear. Then I'm going to start narrating the story. Ladies and gentlemen, take your seats and have a nice afternoon. I will be narrating to you the 3rd chapter of Dracula. I know it's been a while since I've narrated this story. I think it's been a year since I narrated the 2nd chapter, so bear with me. I am going to be narrating a lot more. That is the plan, at least, this year. So hopefully, next stream we can at least continue, and that stream will be sooner. Chapter 3. Jonathan Harker's Journal. Continued. When I found that I was a prisoner, a sort of wild feeling came over me. I rushed up and down the stairs, trying every door and peering out of every window I could find. But after a little, the conviction of my helplessness overpowered all other feelings. When I looked back, after a few hours, I think I must have been mad for a time, for I behaved much as a rat does in a trap. When, however, the conviction had come over to me, that I was helpless, I sat down quietly as I have ever done anything in my life, and began to think over what was the best to be done. I'm thinking still, and have come to a defined conclusion. Of one thing only I am certain, that is, no use making my ideas known to the Count. He knows well that I am imprisoned, and as he has done it himself, and has doubtless his own motives for it. He would only deceive me if I trusted him fully with the facts, for, so far as I can see, my plan will be to keep my knowledge and my fears to myself, and my eyes open. I am, I know, either being deceived, like a baby, by my own fears, or else I am desperate straits, and in the latter to be so, I need, and shall need, all my brains to get through. I hardly come to this conclusion when I heard the great door below shut. I knew that either the Count had returned. He did not come at once to the library, so I went cautiously to my own room and found him making the bed. This was odd, but only confirmed what I had all along thought, that there were no servants in the house. When later I saw him through the chink of the hinges of the door, laying the table of the dining room, I was assured of it, for if he does himself all these manual offices, surely it is proof that there is no one else to them. This gave me a fright, for if there is no one else in the castle, it must have been the Count himself who was the driver of the coach that brought me here. This is a terrible thought, for if so, what does it mean that he could control the wolves, as he did, by only holding up his hand in silence? How was it that all the people in Bistritz and the coach had some terrible fear for me? What meant the giving of the crucifix, of the garlic, of the wild rose, of the mountain ash? Bless that good woman who hung the crucifix around my neck, for it is a comfort and a strength to me whenever I touch it. It is odd that a thing which I would have been thought to regard with disfavor and idleness should, in a time of loneliness and trouble, be of help. Is it that there is something in the essence of the thing itself, or that it is a medium of tangible help in conveying memories of sympathy and comfort? Sometime, if it may be, I must examine the matter and try to make up my mind about it. In the meantime, I must find out all I can about Count Dracula, as if may help me to understand. Tonight, he may talk to himself, if I return the conversation that way. I must be very careful, however, not to awake his suspicion. Midnight. I have had a long talk with the Count. I asked him a few questions about Transylvania history, and he warmed up to the subject wonderfully. In his speaking of things and people, and especially of battles, he spoke as if he had been present to them. This he afterward explained by saying that to a boyar the pride of his house and name of his own pride, that their glory in his glory, that their fate is his fate. Whenever he spoke of his house, he always said we, and spoke almost in the plural like a king speaking. I wish I could put down all he said exactly as he said it, for to me it was most fascinating. It seemed to have it in the whole history of the country. He grew excited as he spoke, and walked about the room, pulling his great white mustache and grasping anything on which he laid his hands as though he would crush it by the main strength. As one he said, which I shall put down as nearly as I can, for it tells in its way the story of his race. We, I'm going to try to pronounce this, Schkellish, have the right to be proud, for in our veins flows the blood of many brave races, who fought as a lion fights for a lordship. Here in the whirlpool of European races, Ugric tribe bore down from Iceland, in fighting spirit, with Thor and Woden gave them. With the berserkers displayed to such fell intent on the seaboards of Europe, and Asia and Africa too, till the people thought that the werewolves themselves had come. Here too, when they came, they found the hunts, where warlike furies had swept the earth like a living flame, till the dying people held that their veins ran the blood of those old witches, who expelled from Cynthia, had made it with the devils in the desert. Fools, fools! What devil or what witch was ever so great as Attila, whose blood is in their veins? He held up his arms. It is a wonder that we were a conquering race, that we were proud, that when the Magyar, the Lombard, the Avar, the Bulgar, and the Turk poured his thousands on frontiers, we drove them back. It is strange that when Arpad and his legions swept the Hungarian fatherland, he found us here, when he reached the frontier, that the Hun following us was completed there, and when the Hungarian flood swept eastward, the Szekelys were claimed as kindred and victorious Magyars, and to us for centuries was trusted the guarding of the frontier of Turkeyland. Ay, and more than that, endless duty of the frontier guard, as the Turks say, water sleeps, an enemy is sleepless. Thank you for subscribing, The Cursed Librarian, and welcome to the stream. Alright, where did I left off? Who were more gladly than we throughout the four nations received the bloody sword, or at its warlike call flocked quicker to the sandguard of the king, when was redeemed that great shame of my nation, the shame of Kosovo, when the flags of the Wallach of the Magyar went down beneath the crescent, who was but one of my own race, at the Fjord, crossed the Dunabad, and beat the Turk to his own crowd. This was a Dracula indeed. Who was it that his own unworthy brother, when he had fallen, sold his people to the Turk, and brought the shame of slavery on them? Was it not its Dracula indeed, who inspired that other of a race, who in a later age, again and again, brought his forces over the great river into Turkeyland, who, when he was beaten back, came again and again and again, when he had come alone from the bloody field, when the troops were being slaughtered, since he knew that he alone could ultimately triumph. They said that he thought only of himself. Ha! What good are the peasants without a leader? When ends the war without a brain, a heart to conduct it? Again, when after the battle of Mohacs, we threw off the Hungarian yoke, we of the Dracula blood were amongst their leaders, for our spirit would not break, and we were not free. O young sir, the Szekelys and the Dracula as their heart's blood, their brains and their swords, can boost the record that the mushroom grove, like the Habsburg and the Manovs, who never reach. The warlike days are over. Blood is too precious a thing in these days of dishonor. Able peace and the glorious of the great races are at table, as is told. It was by this time close in morning, and we went to bed. Mem, this diary seems horribly like a beginning of the Arabian Nights, for everything has to break off in cockcrow, or like the ghost of Hamlet's father. 12th of May. Let me begin with facts. Bare Margaret facts. Verified by books and figures, and of which there can be no doubt. I must not confuse them with experiences, which will have the rest on my own observation, or my memory of them. Last evening the Count came from his room and began by asking me questions on legal matters and on the doing of certain kinds of businesses. I had spent the day whirling about books, and, simply to keep my mind occupied, went over some of the matters, I had been examined at Lincoln's Inn. There was a certain method at the Count's inquiries, so I shall try to put them down in a sequence. The knowledge may somehow or sometime be useful to me. Firstly, he asked if a man in England might have 2 solicitors or more. I told him he might have a dozen if he wished, but that it would not be wise to have more than 1 solicitor engaged in one transaction, as only the one act at a time, that to change would be certain to militate against his interest. He seemed roughly to understand, and went on to ask if there would be any practical difficulty to have 1 man attend, say, to banking, and another to look after shipping, in case local help were needed in a place far from home of the banking solicitor. I asked him to explain more fully, so that I may not by any chance mislead him. So he said, "I shall illustrate your friend and mine, Mr. Peter Hawkins, from under the shadow of your beautiful vertical and Exeter, which is far from London, buys for me, through your good, shelf my place at London. Good. Now here let me say frankly, lest you should think it strange that I have sought the service of it so far from London, instead of one resident there, that my motive was not to local interest might be served, save my wish only, and as one of London residents might perhaps have some purpose of himself or friend to serve, I went thus afield to seek my agent, whose labour should be only to my interest. Now I suppose I, who have much of affairs, wish to ship goods, say, to Newcastle, or Durham, or Harwich, or Dover. Might it not be that it could with some ease be done by consigning to one of these ports? I answered that certain it would be more easily, but as we solicitors had a system of agency, one for the other, so that local work could be done locally for instruction from the solicitor, so that client, simply placing himself in the hand of one man, could have his wishes carried out by him without further trouble. But, said he, I could be at liberty to direct myself. Is it not so? Of course, I replied. Such is often done by men of business, who do not like the whole of their affairs to be known by any one person. Good, he said, and then went on to ask about the through and all sorts of difficulties that might arise, but by forethought could be guarded against. I explained all of these things to him by the best of my ability, and he certainly left me under the impression that he would have made a wonderful solicitor, for there was nothing that he did not think or foresee, for a man who was never in the country, and who did not evidently do much in the way of business. His knowledge and acumen were wonderful, and when had satisfied himself on these points of which he had spoken, and I had verified all of well, and I could buy the books available, he suddenly stood up and said, "Have you written since your first letter to a friend, Mr. Peter Hawkins, or to any other?" It was with some bitterness in my heart that I answered that I had not, that as I had not seen my opportunity to send letters to anybody. "Then write it now, my young friend," he said, laying down a heavy hand on my shoulder. "Write to our friend and another, and say, if it will please you, that I shall stay with me, that you shall stay with me for until a month from now? Do you wish me to stay so long? I asked, for my heart grew cold at the thought. I desire it much, and I will take no refusal. When you master employee, what you will, engage that someone should come on his behalf. It was understood that my needs only were to be consulted. I've not sinned it. Is it not so? What could I do with but bow acceptance? It was Mr. Harking's interest, but not mine. And I had to think of him, and not myself. And besides, while Count Dracula was speaking, there was that in his eyes, and his bearing which wished I could have no choice. The Count saw his victory in my bow, and his mastery in the trouble of my face, for he began at once to use them, but his own smooth, restless way. I pray you, my good young friend, that you will not discourse of these things other than business in your letters. It will doubtless please your friends to know that you are well, and that you look forward to getting home to them. Is it not so? As he spoke, he handed me 3 sheets of notepaper and 3 envelopes. They were all of the thinnest foreign post, and looking at them, then at him, and noticing his quiet smile, with his sharp canine teeth, laying over the red underlip, I understood as well as if he had spoken that I should be careful with what I wrote, for he would be able to read it. So I determined to write only formal notes now, but to write fully to Mr. Hawkins in secret, and also to Mina, for to her I could write in shorthand, which would puzzle the Count if he did see it. When I had written my 2 letters, I sat quiet, reading a book whilst the Count wrote several notes, referring as he wrote them to several books on the table. Then he took up my 2 and placed them with his own. He put by the writing materials after that. An instant the door had closed behind him. I leaned over and looked at the letters, which were face down on the table. I felt no compunction in doing so, for under the circumstances, I felt that I should protect myself in every way I could. One of the letters was directed to Samuel F. Binghamton, number 7 The Crescent, Whitby. Another to Harry Hollander, Varna. The third was to Cutts & Co., London, and the fourth to Harriet Klopstock and Bilroof, bankers. The second and fourth were unsealed, and I was just about to look at them when I saw the door handle move. I sank back at my seat, having just had the time to replace the letters, and they had been and to resume my book before the Count, holding still another letter in his hand, entering the room. He took up the letter to the table and stamped it carefully, and then turning to me and said, "I trust you will forgive me, but I have much work to do in private this evening. You will, I hope, find all things as you wish." At the door he turned, and after a moment pause, said, "Let me advise you, my dear young friend. Nay, let me warn you, with all seriousness, that you should leave these rooms. You will not by any chance go to sleep in any other part of the castle. It is old, and as many memories there have been are bad dreams for those who sleep unwisely. Be warned, should sleep now or ever overcome you, or be like to do, then haste to your own chamber, or to these rooms, for your rest will then be safe. But if you be not careful in this respect, then..." He finished his speech in a gruesome way, for he mentioned with his hands that if he were washing them, I quite understood. My only doubt was that as to whether any dreams could be more terrible than the unnatural, horrible net of gloom and mystery which seemed close around me. Later, I endorsed her last words written, but this time there was no doubt in question. I shall not fear to sleep in any place where he is not. I have placed a crucifix over my head of my bed. I imagine that my rest is thus free from dreams, and there it shall remain. Where he left me, I went to my room. After a little while, not hearing any sound, I came out and went up to the stone stair, where I could look out towards the south. There was some sense of freedom in the vast expanse, inaccessible though it was to me, as compared with the narrow darkness of the courtyard. Looking out of this, I felt that I was indeed imprisoned, and I seemed to want a breath of fresh air. Though it were of the night, I am beginning to feel this nocturnal existence tell on me. It is destroying my nerve. I stare at my own shadow, and I am filled with all sorts of horrible imaginings. God knows that there is the ground of my terrible fear in this rusting place. I looked out over the beautiful expanse, bathed in a soft yellow moonlight, till it was almost as light as day, and the soft lights of the distant hills became melted, and the shadow of the valleys as gorgeous and velvety in blackness. In a mere beauty to cheer me, there was a peace and comfort in every breath I drew. As I leaned from the window, my eye was caught by something moving, a story below me, and somewhat to my left, I imagined that the older rooms, that the windows of the court's own room would look out. The window at which I stood was tall and deep, stone mullinered, and through weather down, was still complete. But it was evidently many a day since a chase had been there. I drew back behind the stonework and looked carefully out. What I saw was that Count's head coming out from the window. I did not see the face, but I knew the man by neck and the movement of his back and arms. In any case, I could not mistake the hands which I had so many opportunities of studying. I was at first interested and somewhat amused, for this wonderful how small a matter will interest and amuse the man when he was a prisoner. But my very feelings changed to repulsion and terror when I saw the whole man slowly emerge from the window and began to crawl down the castle wall, over the dreaded abyss, face down, with his cloak spreading out around him, like wings. At first I couldn't believe my eyes. I thought it was some trick of the moonlight, some weird effect of the shadow, but I kept looking, and it could not be a delusion. I saw the fingers and toes grasp the corners of the stones, worn clear of the mortar and the stress of years, and thus, using every protection, and occasionally moved downwards with considerable speed, just like a lizard moves along a wall. A manner of this man is this, or a manner of creature it is to semblance of man. I feel the dread of this horrible place overpowering me. I am the fear, an awful fear, and there's no escape for me. I completely passed about a terrace that I dare not think of. 15th of May. Once more have I seen the Count go out in his lizard fashion. He moved downwards in a sidelong way, some 100 feet down, and a good deal to his left. He vanished into the hall or window when his head had disappeared. I leaned out and tried to see more, but without avail. The distance was too great to allow a proper angle or sight. I know he had left the castle now, and thought to use the opportunity to explore more than I dared to do as yet. I went back to the room, and taking a lamp, tried all the doors. They were locked, and I had expected all the locks were comparatively new. But I went down the stairs and to the hall where I entered originally. I found I could pull back the bolts easily though and unhook the great chains, but the door was locked, and the key was gone. That key must be in the Count's room. I must watch and shoot his door be unlocked, so that I may get it and escape. I went on to make a thorough examination of the various stairs and passages, and to try the doors that opened from them. 1 or 2 small rooms near the hall were open, and there was nothing to them in except all furniture, dusty with age and moth-eaten. At least, however, I found one at the top of the stairway, which, though it seemed to be locked, gave a little under pressure. I tried it harder, and found that it was not really locked, but that the presence came from the fact that the hinges had fallen somewhat, that the heavy door rested on the floor. Here was the opportunity, which I might have not gotten again. So I exerted myself, and with many efforts forced it back so I could enter. I was now in the wing of the castle, further to the right than the rooms I knew, and slowly lower down. From the windows I could see the suite of rooms lay along the south of the castle, the windows of the end room looking out both west and south. On the latter side, as well to the former, there was a great precipice. The castle was built on the corner of the great rock, so that the 3 sides it was quite impregnable, and great windows were placed here on the sling, or bow, or curvin could not reach, and conspicuous light and comfort, impossible to position, which had to be guarded, were secured. To the west was a great valley, and then rising very far, great jagged mountain fastness, rising peak on peak, and sheer rock mountains fastness, shredded with mountain ash and thorn, whose roots clung in cracks and crevices and crannies of the stone. This was evidently the portion of the castle occupied by one of the ladies by bygone days. For the furniture had by more air of comfort than any I had seen. The windows were curtainless, and the yellow moonlight, flooding in through the diamond panes, enabled one of these very colors, whilst it softened the wealth of dust which laid over them and discussed in some measures of the ravines of time and moth. My lamp seemed to be the only effect in the brilliant moonlight, but I was glad to have it with me, for there was a dread loneliness in the place, which chilled my heart and made my nerves tremble. Still, it was better than living alone in the rooms, which I had come to hate from the presence of the Count. And after trying a little of the school's nerves, I found a soft quietude come over me. Here I am, sitting at the little oak table, the old-time spotlessly fair lady set to pen, with much thought and many blushes, her ill-spent love letter, and writing in a diary in shorthand. All has happened since I closed it last. And it's 19th century up to date with vengeance. And yet, unless my senses deceived me, all centuries had and have powers to their own which were modernly cannot kill. Okay, one moment until I continue with the story. I'm gonna smear something on my lips because they are getting very dry with this season. Oh, I see more people have entered. Welcome, welcome. Historian Girl, glad to see you here as well. Hope you guys are all enjoying it. I was just thinking about how I used to enjoy listening to your stories. Really? Well, I'm glad you're here. It must have been fate then. Oh, how wonderful. I saw your post on X and I decided to pay a visit. Oh, that's so nice of you. Thank you. That's really nice. Okay, let's see. Where did I left it off? Oh, yes. Later the morning of 16th of May. God preserved my sanity. For this I am reduced. Safety. Of the insurance of safety are things of the past. Whilst I live on here, there is but one thing to hope for, that I may not go mad, if, indeed, I be not mad already. If I be sane, then surely it is maddening to think that of all the foul things that lurk in this hateful place the Count is to the least dreadful to me, that to him alone I can look for safety, and though this be only whilst I can serve this purpose. Great God, merciful God, let me be calm for out this, when what lies madness indeed. I begin to get new lights of certain things which puzzled me. Up to now, I never quite knew what Shakespeare meant when he made Hamlet say, "My tables, quick my tablets, quick my tablets, thus meet that I put it down," etc. For now, feeling as though my own brain was unhinged, or if the shock had come with much end of the undone, I turned to my diary for repose. The habit of entering occasionally must help or soothe me. The Count's mysterious warning frightened me. At time, it frightens me more now when I think of it. For the future he was a fearful hold upon me. I shall fear to doubt what he may say. When I had written in my diary, and had fortunately found a book and a pen in my pocket, I felt sleepy. The Count's warning came up into my mind, but when I took pleasure of disobeying it, and sense of sleep was upon me. And whilst of a singer, of sleep brings us outrider, of soft moonlight soothed, and was the wide expanse without, gave a sense of freedom which refreshed me. I determined not to sign, not to return to night, to the gloom-haunted rooms, but to sleep where, here of old, ladies had sat and sung their lived sweet lives, which their gentle breast had set to the menfolk, away to the midst of the wordless wars. I dread a great couch of this place, near the corner, so that I lay. I could look at the lovely view to the east and south, and think of the uncaring of the dust, composed myself for sleep. I suppose I must have fallen asleep. I suppose so, but I fear for all that followed was starting real. So real that now sitting here for the broad, full sunlight of the morning, I cannot in the least believe that it was all sleep. I was not alone. The room was the same, unchanged in any way since I came into it. I could see along the floor in the brilliant moonlight of my own footsteps marked, and I had disturbed the long accumulation of the dust. In the moonlight opposed to me were two young women. Ladies by their dresses and manner. I thought at the time that I must have been dreaming when I saw them, for thought the moonlight was behind them. They threw no shadow to the floor. They came closer to me and looked at me for some time, and they whispered together. Two were dark, and had high and curled noses like the Count, and great dark piercing eyes that seemed to be almost red with contrast to the pale yellow moon. The other was fair as can be, and great waving masses of golden hair and eyes like pale sapphires. I seemed somehow to know her face, and to know it in connection with some dreamy fear, but I could not recollect at the moment or how or where. All three had brilliant white teeth that shone like pearls against the ruby of their voluptuous lips. There was something about them that made me uneasy, some longing, at the same time some deadly fear. I felt it in my heart, a wicked burning desire that they would kiss me with those red lips. It is not good to note this down, lest some day it should meet Mina's eye and cause her pain, but in truth they whispered together, and then they laughed, all three, with a silvery musical laugh, but as hard as though the sounds never cast have come through the softness of the human lips. It was like an intolerable thingy sweetness of water glasses and played on by the cunning hand. The fair girl shook her head coquettously, and the other two urged her on. One said, "Go on. You are first, and we shall follow. Yours is the right to begin." The other said, "He's quite young and strong. There are kisses for us all." I lay quiet, looking out under my eyelashes in the agony of delight and anticipation. The fair girl advanced and bent over me till I could feel the movement of her breath upon me. Sweet it was in one sense, honey sweet, and sensed the same tingling through the nerves as a bitter voice, the bitter unlying on the sweet and the bitter offensiveness, as one smells in blood. I was afraid to raise my eyelids, but looked out and saw perfectly under the lashes. The girl went on her knees and bent over me, simply gloating. There was a deliberate, voluptuous which was both thrilling and repulsive, and as she arched her neck, she actually licked her lips like an animal, till I could see the moonlight, the moisture shining on her scarlet lips and her red tongue that I lapped with the white sharp teeth. Lower and lower went her head, and her lips went below the range of my mouth and chin, and seemed about to fasten on my throat. Then she paused, and I could hear the churning sound of her tongue as she licked her teeth and lips, and I could feel the hot breath on my neck. Then does the skin on my throat begin to tingle, as one flesh does when the hand that is so tickled, it approaches near and nearer. I could feel the soft shiver touch of the lips, and the supple, sensitive skin of my throat. Then the hard dents of two sharp teeth, just touching and passing there. I closed my eyes in a luxurious ecstasy, and waited with beating heart. But at an instant, another sensation swept through me, as quickly as lightning. I was conscious of the presence of the Count, and his being as I leapt in a storm of fury. As my eyes opened, involuntarily, I saw his strong hand grasp the slender neck of the fair woman, and with a giant's power draw it back. The blue eyes transformed with a fury, the white teeth clamping with rage, and the fair cheeks blazing with passion. But the Count, never did I imagine such a wolf in fury, even the demons of the pit. His eyes were positively blazing, his red light was lurid, as if the flames of hellfire blazed behind them. His face was deathly pale, and the limbs of it were hard like drawn wires. The thick brows that met over with the nose, how seemed like having bar of white hot metal. With a fierce sweep of his arm, he hurled the woman from him, and then mentioned to the others, as though he were beating them back. It was the same obtruse gesture that I had seen used to the wolves. In a voice which, thought low and ultimate in a whisper, seemed to cut through the air and ring through the room, he said, "How dare you touch him, any of you? How dare you cast his eyes off him when I had forbidden it? Back, I tell you all! This man belongs to me. Beware, you meddle with him, or you have to deal with me." The fair girl, with a laugh of ribald comedy, turned and answered him, You yourself never laughed. You never laugh." On this the other woman joined, with such a mirthless, hard, soulless laughter rang through the room, and it almost made me faint to hear. It seemed like a pleasure of fiends. And the Count turned, after looking at my face attentively, and said in a soft whisper, "Yes, I too can laugh. You yourselves can tell it from the past. Is it not so? Well, I now promise you that when I am done with him, you shall kiss him at your will. Now go! Go! I must awaken him, for there's much work to do." "Are we to have nothing tonight?" said one of them, with a low laugh, as she pointed to the bag which he had thrown upon the floor, and which moved as though there was something living within it. For answer, he nodded his head. One of the women jumped forward and opened it. If my eyes did not deceive me, it grasped a low will, a half-smothered child. The woman closed around it, whilst I aghast with horror. But as I looked, they disappeared, and with them the dreadful bag. There was no door near them, and they could not have passed me through my noticing. They simply seemed to fade into the rays of the moonlight, and passed out through the window, for I could not see outside the dim, shadowy forms, for a moment before they faded away. Then the horror came over me, and I sank down unconsciousness. Okay, that was chapter 3. Let's see, I'm gonna go to bed. See you. See you, Bunny. It was really fun to have you. Thank you for joining the stream. How's everybody tonight so far? I'm doing good. That's great to hear. I'm doing pretty good as well. I actually had a well, I think I did post about it on Twitter. Well, if we can still call it Twitter, that is. It's I guess some people call it X now, some people call it Twitter. About oh, it's 11 a.m. here in Michigan, USA. Wow. That's pretty early in the morning for you, isn't it? Well, at least for me it would be, I think, to watch a live stream. But yeah, I was able to do something like this as well during AnimeCon last weekend, which was super fun. For the people who don't know what AnimeCon is, it's a local convention in the Netherlands. And also one of my favorite conventions so far, which I've been going to every year. Also, the bigger cosplay conventions are held there as well, which is really cool. The cosplay competitions that are held there are Tournament of Cosplay, European Cosplay, the Cup, I think. At least 4, if I'm correct. World Cosplay Summit, and one other. GOF, we call it, like short. Which is pretty fun. So usually we have like the masters of cosplay from our country that would, join those competitions. So you get like the most beautiful costumes there. I was there this year for narration. So on the Saturday evening I was narrating a couple stories. Brought a couple of books with me from Edgar Allan Poe, Lovecraft, which was super fun. Also brought some of my own stories with me, as well as a couple of well-known creepypastas. So it went really well. People really liked it. So if it's possible, I probably will try it again next year. It is something that we used to do, like at conventions. Well, it used to be a thing, spooky stories, back when AnimeCon was still in Den Haag. And now it's in Rijswijk, so it's like different place. And we haven't had spooky stories in a while with the events. It's mainly just either food-related events or cosplay, which is also really fun, of course, for a cosplay event. I have done cosplay lectures a couple of times now, there and at other conventions. They're great, by the way. It's like having a class of people and they're actually there to learn. So they're actually invested. So, yeah. I think it was really fun, and I heard a lot of people that came there who would, return the next day for another round. Some of the stories that I've told, I think one of them was The Raven I did, along with Annabelle Lee from Edgar Allan Poe, Mr. Emery, Jeff the Killer we did, which was one of the stories that got requested. So I had a little table set up with a list of stories that I had with me, so people could request something. We even had, I think, people from the SCP group that came in to check out the narrations, because I had a couple of those with me as well, so that was fun. So yeah, if all goes well, I'm probably gonna try it again at either the same convention next year or maybe at more conventions. We'll see if people like it. It gives something more to do to the other people who, you know, go to an event like this. Especially in the evenings. Some conventions will go on into the later in the evenings. 18 plus type of events are very very popular. This event even holds oh my god, what's it called? Hentai voiceovers? Which is also one of the things that was being held at the Saturday evening in one of the other tents. Because I was put inside of this really big party tent for the narration with like this beamer again behind me. Well, I could stream like, you know, this. I had this as a setup as well, minus my VTuber model. I just posted like a picture of my character on there, like, I can't make it move, I am here in person, so I guess I'll just put a picture of it, like a drawing up there. That's fine. But like 2 tents the other way, you had people doing, you know, those voiceovers, which was super fun as well, if I heard other people correctly. Oh my god. The stuff that people organize at conventions is absolutely hilarious sometimes. Would have loved to see how that would go, but it was during my own narrating gig. Alright, let's see. I think we still have some... Oh, it's only 1 hour into the stream. Okay. Then we can do chapter 4 as well. Don't worry. Alright. Chapter 4. Jonathan Harker's Journal. Continued. I awoke in my own bed. If it had to be that, I had not dreamt. The Count must have carried me there. I tried to satisfy myself on the subject, but could not arrive at any unquestionable result. To be sure, there were certain small evidences, such as that my clothes were folded and laid by the manner, which was not my habit. My watch was still unwound, and I am righteously accustomed to the wind it was lasting before going to bed, and many such details, but these things are no proof. Today may have been evidence to my mind, was not that usual, and from some chamber and another, I had certainly been much upset. I must watch for proof. Of one thing I'm glad. If it was that the Count carried me here and undressed me, he must have been hurried in this task, for my pockets are in fact. I am sure his diary would have been a mystery to him, which he would not have been brooked. He would have taken or destroyed it, as I looked around the room. Although it has been to me so full of fear, it is now a sort of sanctuary, for nothing can be more dreadful than those awful women who are waiting to suck my blood. 18th of May. I must have been down to look at my room again in daylight, for I must know the truth. When I got to the doorway at the top of the stairs, I found it closed. It had been so forcefully driven against the jamb that the part of the woodwork had splintered. I could see that the bolt of the lock had not been shot, but the door is fastened from the inside. I fear it was no dream, and must act on this surmise. 19th of May. I'm surely in the toils. Last night the Count asked me, in a severe tone, to write 3 letters. One saying that my work here was nearly done, and that I should start home within a few days. Another that I was starting Another that I was starting on the next morning from the time of the letter, and a third that I was left in the castle and arrived at Bistritch. I would fain have rebelled, but felt that in the present states of things I would have maddened to quote on the open with the Count which I am so absolutely in his power. To refuse would be extort of his suspicion and arouse his anger. He knows that I know too much, and that I must not leave, lest I be dangerous to him. Now my only chance is to prolong my opportunities. Something may occur which will give me a chance to escape. I saw in his eyes something that gathering wolf, which was manifested when I hurled his fair woman from him. He explained to me that posts were few and uncertain, and that my writing would ensure ease of mind to my friends, and he assured me with so much impressiveness that he would comprehend the later letters, which would be held over Bistritch until due time. Any case would admit my prolonging my stay, so that to oppose him would have been create a new suspicion. I therefore presented to fall in with his views, and asked him the dates I should put on the letters. He calculated a minute and then said, the first should be June 12th, the second June 19th, and the third June 29th. I know now the span of my life. God help me. The 28th of May. There is a chance of my escape, or at any rate of my able to send word home. A band of Schenny have come to the castle and were account of the courtyard. These Schenny are gypsies. I've notes of them in my book. They are peculiar to this part of the world, though allied with ordinary gypsies all over the world. There are thousands of them in Hungary and Transylvania, who are almost outside all law. They attach themselves, as a rule, to some great noble of Boyar, and call themselves by his name. They are faceless and without religion, save superstition, and they talk to only their own verities of the Romani tongue. I shall write to some letters home, and shall try to get them to have them posted. I have already spoken to them through my window, began upon acquaintanceship. They took their hats off and made obedience and many signs, which, however, I could not understand any more than I could their spoken language. I've written the letters. Mina's in a shorthand, and I simply asked Mr. Hawkins to communicate with her. I have explained my situation, but without horrors which I may not surmise. It would shock and frighten her to death, were I to expose my heart to her. Should the letters not carry, when the Count shall not yet know my secret of the extent of my knowledge. I have given the letters. I threw them through the bars of my windows with a gold piece and made what signs I could to have them posted. The man who took them pressed them to his heart and bowed, and then put them in his cap. I could do no more. I stole them back to the study and began writing. As the Count did not come in, I've written here. The Count has come. He sat down beside me, and I said in the smoothest voice as he opened 2 letters. Ksenia has given me these, of which I thought no, of not whence they come. I shall of course take care. See? He must have looked at it. One from you, and to my friend Peter Hawkins. The other... He caught sight of the strange symbols as he opened the envelope, and a dark look came into his face, and his eyes blazed wickedly. The other is a vile thing, an outrage upon friendship and hospitality. It is not signed. Well, so it cannot matter to us. And he calmed, held letter and envelope into the flame of the lamp till they were consumed. Then he went on. The letter to Hawkins that I shall of course send on, since it is yours. Your letters are sacred to me. Your pardon, my friend, that unknowingly I did break the seal. What, you not cover it again? He held out the letter to me, and with a cautious bow handed me a clean envelope. I could only redirect it and hand it to him in silence. When he went out of the room, I could hear the key turn softly. A minute later, I went over and tried it. The door was locked. When an hour or 2 after, the Count came quietly into the room. His coming awakened me, for I had gone to sleep on the sofa. He was very cautious and very cheery in his manner, and seeing that I had been sleeping, he said, "So, my friend, you are tired? Get to bed. That's the surest rest. I have not had the pleasure to talk tonight, since there were many labors to me. But you will sleep, I pray." I passed to my room and went to bed, and strange to say, slept without dreaming. Despair has its own calms. 31st of May. The morning when I spoke, I thought I would provide myself with some paper and envelopes from my bag and keep them in my pocket, so that I might write in case I should get an opportunity. But again a surprise, again a shock. Every scrap of paper was gone, and with it all my notes, my memoranda relating to railways and travel, my letter of credit, and in fact all that might be useful to me, were I once outside the castle. I sat and pondered a while, and then some thought occurred to me. I made search of the portmanteau and the wardrobe where I had placed my clothes. The suit in which I had travelled was gone, also my overcoat and my rug. I could not find a trace of them anywhere. This looked like a new scheme of villainy. The 17th of June. This morning I was sitting on the edge of my bed, cuttering my brains. I heard without a cracking of wisp and pondering, a scraping of horses' feet up the rocky path beyond the courtyard. With joy I hurled it up to the window, then drive into the yard 2 great leather wagons, each drawn by 8 sturdy horses, and at the head of each pair a Slovak with a white hat. Great nail-studded belt, dirty sheepskin, and high boots. They had also had their long staves in hand. I ran to the door, intending to descend and try and join them through the main hall, as I thought that way might be open for them. Again a shock. My door was fastened on the outside. And then I ran to the window and cried to them. They looked up stupidly and pointed, but just then the headman of the Stasi came out, and seeing them point to my window, said something, at which they laughed. Henceforth, no effort of mine, no piteous cry or anguish entreaty, which make them even look at me. Resolutely turned away. The leatherless wagon contained great square boxes of handles of thick rope. These were evidently empty, but by the ease with which the Slavics handled them, and by the resonance, as they were roughly moved, when they were all unloaded and packed in a great heap in the corner of the yard, the Slavics were given some money by the Shkani, and spitting on it for luck, lazily went each of the horses' heads. Shortly afterwards, I heard the cracking of their whips die away in the distance. 24th of June, before morning. Last night the Count left me early, and I locked himself into his own room. As soon as I dared, I ran up the winding stair, and looked out of the window with open self. I thought I would watch for the Count, for there is something going on. The Shkani and Quanted somewhat in the castle, and are doing work of some kind. I know it, for now and then I hear faraway muffled sounds of a mattock and a spade, and, whatever it is, it must be the end of some ruthlessness villainy. I had been at the window somewhat less than a half an hour, when I saw something coming from out of the Count's window. I drew back and watched carefully, and saw the whole man emerge. It was a new shock to me to find that he had a new suit of clothes, which I had worn whilst travelling there, and slung over his shoulder was a terrible bag which I had seen the woman take away. There could be no doubt of this quest. There could be no doubt at his quest, and in my garb too. This, then, in his new scheme of evil, and he will allow others to see me, as they think, so that his may both leave evidence that I have been seen in the towns of villages posting my own letters, and that any wickedness which he may shall do by the local people attributed to me. It makes me rage to think that this can go on, and whilst I am shut up in here, federal prisoner, but without the protection of the law, which is even criminals' right of consolution. I thought I would watch for the Count's return, and for a long time sat dodgily at the window. Then I began to notice that there were some quaint little specks, tiny as grains of dust, and they whirled round and degraded, and the clusters in a nebulous sort of way. I watched them, and sense of soothing, and sort of the calm stood over me. I leaned back in embrasure for the more comfortable position, so that I could enjoy more fully the aerial gambolling. Something made me start up, a low piteous howling of dogs, somewhere far below in the valley, which was hidden from my sight. Louder it seemed to ring in my ears, and the floating motes of the dust took new shapes with the sound as they danced in the moonlight. I felt myself struggling to awake to the calls of the instincts. Nay, my very soul was struggling, and my half-remembered sensibilities were striving to the answered call. I was coming hypnosed, hypnosed. Quicker and quicker danced by the dust. The moonbeams seemed to quiver as they went by into the mass of gloom beyond. More and more they gathered, till they seemed to make dim phantom shapes, and then I started, broad awake in the full possession of my senses, and ran screaming from the place. The phantom shapes which were becoming gradually materialized from the moonbeams were those of the 3 ghostly women who I was doomed. I fled, and felt somewhat safer in my own room, where there was no moonlight, where the lamp was burning brightly. When a couple of hours had I passed, heard something stirring in the Count's room, something like a sharp wail, quickly suppressed, and then there was a silence, deep, awful silence, which chilled me. With a beating heart I tried the door, but I was locked in my prison, and I could do nothing. I sat down and I simply cried. As I sat, I heard the sound of the courtyard, without the agonizing cry of a woman. I rushed through the window, and throwing it up, peering out between the bars. There indeed was a woman with devil's hair, holding her hands over her heart as one distressed with running. She was leaning against the corner of the gateway. When she saw my face at the window, she threw herself forward and shouted in a voice laden with menace, "Monster, give me my child!" She threw herself onto her knees and raised up her hands, cried the same words in tones which wrung my heart. Then she tore her hair and beat her breast. I abandoned herself to her violences of the extravagant emotion. Finally she threw herself forward, and though I could not see her, I could hear the beating of her naked hands against the door. I somewhat high overhead, probably on the tower, I heard the voice of the Count calling in a harsh, metallic whisper. His call seemed to be answered from far and wide by the howling wolves. Before many minutes had passed, a pack of them poured, like a pent dam with liberty, or the wild entrance into the courtyard. There was no cry from the woman, and the howling of the wolves was but short. Before long they streamed away lingering, licking their lips. I could not pity her, for I knew what had become of her child, and she was better dead. What shall I do? What can I do? How can I escape from this dreadful thing of the night and gloom and fear? 25th of June, morning. No man knows till he has suffered from the night, how sweet and how dear to his heart, and the morning can be. When the sun grew so high this morning that it struck off the top of the great gateway upon side of my window, the high spot had it touched seemed to me as if a dove from the ark had lighted there. My fear fell from me, as it had been Valtry's garment, which dissolved in warmth. It must take action. I must take action from sorts was the courage of the days upon time. Last night, one of my post-dated Last night, one of my post-dated letters went to post. The first of the fatal series, which is to blot out the very trace of my existence from the earth. Let me not think of it. Action. It has always been the night time, and I have been motionless and threatened, or in some way in danger, or in fear. I have not yet seen the Count in daylight. Can it be that he sleeps when others are awake? When he may be awake whilst they sleep? If I could only get into his room. But there is no possible way. The door is always locked. No way for me. Yes, there is a way, if one dares to take it. While his body has gone, why may not another body go? I have seen himself crawl from the window. Why should not I imitate him and go in by his window? The chances are desperate, but my need is more desperate still. I shall risk it, and the worst it can be only my death. And a man's death is not a calf's, and the dreaded hair fire may still be open to me. God help me in my task. Goodbye, Mina, if I fall, if I fail. Goodbye, my faithful friend and second father. Goodbye, all, and my last of all, Mina. Oops. Some day later. I have made the effort, and God, helping me, have come safely back to his room. I must put down every detail in order. I went whilst my courage, while fresh, straight to the window on the south side, and at once got outside on a narrow ledge of stone, which runs around the building on the side. A strong and big and rough cut, and the mortar has the process of time been washed away between them. I took off my boots and ventured out into the desperate way. I looked down once, so as to make sure that the sudden glimpse of the awful depth would not overcome me. But after that I kept my eyes away from it. I knew pretty well that the direction and distance from the Count's window, and made it as well as I could, having regard as the opportunities avail. I did not feel dizzy. I suppose I was too excited, and time seemed ridiculously short till I found myself standing on the window-sill, trying to raise up the sash. I was filled with anguish. However, when I bent down and slid feet foremost through the window, then I looked around for the Count, but with a surprise and gladness made a discovery. The room was empty, but with banished furniture with odd things, which seemed to have never been used. The furniture was something in the same style as that of the south rooms, and was covered in dust. I looked for the key, but it was not in the lock. I could not find it anywhere. The only thing I found was the great heap of gold in the corner. Gold of all kinds, Roman and British, Australian and Hungarian, Greek and Turkish money, covered with a film of dust, as though it had been laying long in the ground. None of it that I noticed was less than 300 years old. There were also change of ornaments, some jeweled, but all of them old and stained. At one corner of the room was a heavy door. I tried it, for since I could not find the key of the room or the key of the outer room, which was the main object of my search, I must make further examination, or all of my efforts would be in vain. It was open, and led through a stone passage to the circular stairway, which led steeply down. I descended, minding carefully where I went, for the stairs were dark, being only lit by loopholes in the heavy manicery. In the bottom there was a dark, tunnel-like passage, through which came a darkly, sickly odor, and the odor of the old earth newly turned. As I went through the passage, the smell grew closer and heavier, as at last I pulled open the heavy door, which stood ajar, and found myself in an old ruined chapel, and had evidently been used as a graveyard. The roof was broken, and in two places were steps leading to vaults, and the ground had recently been dug over, and the earth placed in great wooden boxes, manifestly those which had been brought by the Slovaks. There was nobody about, and I made search for any further outlets, but there was none, and I went over every inch of the ground, so as not to lose a chance. I went down even into vaults, where the light was dim, although to do so was a dread to my very soul. Into 2 of these I went, but I saw nothing except the fragrance of old coffins and piles of dust. In the 3rd, however, I made a discovery. There, in one of the great boxes, of which were 50 in all, a pile of newly dug earth, lay the Count. He was he was either dead or asleep. I could not say which, for his eyes were open and stony, but without the glassiness of death, and his cheeks were warmth of life through the pallor, and the lips were redder than ever, but there was no sign of movement, no pulse, no breath, no beating of the heart. I bent over him, and tried to find any sign of life, but in vain. He could not have lain there long, for the earthly smell would have passed away in a few hours. By the side of the box was its cover, pierced with holes here and there. I thought he may have the keys on him, but when I went to search I saw the dead eyes, and in them, dead though they were, such a look of hate through unconsciousness of me or my presence, that I fled from the place, and leaving the Count's room by the window, crawled up to the castle wall. Regaining my room, I threw myself panting upon the bed, and tried to think. 29th of June. Today is the date of my last letter, and the Count has taken steps to prove that it was genuine, for again I saw him leave the castle by the same window, and in my clothes. As he went down the wall, lizard fashion, I wished that I had a gun or some lethal weapon, that I might destroy him. But I fear that no weapon worked alone by a man's hand would have any effect on him. I dared not wait until he is returned, but I feared to see those weird sisters. I came back to the library, and read till I fell asleep. I was awakened by the Count, who looked at me as grimly as a man came look as he said, "Tomorrow, my friend, we must part. You can return to your beautiful England. I, too, some work, which may have such an end, till we may never meet. Your letter home has been dispatched. Tomorrow I shall not be here, but all shall be ready for the journey. In the morning come to Snaggy, who have all the labours of their own here, and all come Slovaks, who they have gone, my carriage shall come for you, and shall bear you to the Borgo Pass, to meet the language of the Bukovina and the Bistrich. But I am in hopes that I shall see more of you at Castle Dracula." I suspected him, and determined his sincerity. Sincerity! It seemed like a profanation of the word to write in its connection with such a monster. So asked him point blank, "Why may I not go tonight?" "Because, my dear sir, my coachman and horses are away on a mission." "But I could walk with pleasure. I want to get away at once." He smiled with a soft, smooth, diabolical smile, that I knew there was a trick behind the smoothness. He said, "And your baggage?" "I do not care about it. I can send for it some other time." The Count stood up and said, with a sweet conscience, and made me rub my eyes, It seemed so real. You English have a saying which is close to my heart, for its spirit is which rules our boyars. Welcome, dear young friend. Not an hour shall you wait in my house again you will, though sad I am that you are going, and that you so suddenly desire it. Come. With a stately gravity, he with the lamp precessed me down to the stairs and along the hall. Suddenly he stopped. Hark! Close at hand came the howling of many wolves. It was almost as if its sound sprang up at the rising of his hand, just as the music of the great orchestra seemed to leap under the baton of the conductor. After the pause of the moment, he proceeded in a stately way to the door, drew back the ponderous bolt, unhooked the heavy chains, and began to draw it open. To my intense astonishment, I say that it was unlocked. Suspiciously, I looked all around, but could see no key of any kind. As the door began to open, the howling of the wolves grew louder. The red jaws, with champing teeth, and the blunt clawed feet, as they leaped, came in through the opening door. I knew then that to struggle at the moment against the Count was useless. With no such allies as these at his command, I could do nothing. But still the door continued slowly to open, and only the Count's body stood in the gap. Suddenly it struck me that this might be the moment and means of my doom. I was to be given to the wolves, and at my own instigation, yes. There was a diabolical wickedness in the idea, great enough for the Count, and the last chance I cried out, "Shut the door! I shall wait till morning!" I covered my face with my hands, and tried to cover my tears of bitter disappointment. With one sweep of his powerful arm, the Count threw the door shut, and the great bolts clanged and echoed through the hall as they shot back into their places. In silence we returned to the library, and after a minute or two I went to my own room, and the last I saw of Count Dracula was his kissing his hand to me, with a right loud, a triumph of his eyes, and with a smile that Judas in hell might be proud of. When I was in my room, and about to lie down, I thought I heard a whispering at my door. I went to the soft and listened. Unless my eyes deceived me, I heard the voice of the Count. Back, back, to your own place. Your time is not yet come. Wait, have patience. Tonight is mine. Tomorrow night is yours. There was a low, sweet ripple of laughter. In a rage I threw open the door, and saw without it 3 terrible women, licking their lips. As I appeared, they all joined in a horrible laugh and ran away. I came back to my room and threw myself to my knees. Is this how it's going to end? Tomorrow! Tomorrow! Lord help me, and those to whom I'm near. 30th of June, morning. These may be the last words I've ever write in this diary. I slept till just before dawn, and when I awoke, threw myself on my knees, and determined that if death came, he should find me ready. At least I felt a subtle change in the air, and knew that the morning had come. Then came the welcome cockcrow, and I felt that I was safe. With a glad heart I opened my door, and ran down the hall. I had seen that the door was unlocked, and now escape was before me. With hands that trembled with eagerness, and unhooked the chains and drew back the massive bolts. but the door would not move. Despair seized me. I pulled and pulled at the door, and shook it till massive it is. It rattled in ceasement. I could see the bolt shut. It had been locked after I left the Count. When wild desire took me, I obtained the key at any risk. I determined that and there to scale the wall again and gain the Count's room. He might kill me, but death now seemed the happier choice of evils. Without a pause I rushed up to the east window, and scrambled down the wall, as before, into the Count's room. It was empty, but that is what I was expecting. I could not see a key anywhere, but the heap of gold remained. I went through the door, in the corner down the winding stair, and along the dark passage in the old chapel. I knew now well enough where to find the monster I sought. The great box was in the same place, close again in the wall, but the lid was laid on it. Not fastened down, but the nails ready in the places to be hammered home. I knew I must reach the body for the key. So I raised the lid, and laid it back against the wall, and then I saw something which filled my very soul in horror. There lay the Count, but looking as if his youth had been half renewed, for the white hair and moustache were changed to dark ivory grey, her cheeks were fuller, and the white skin seemed ruby red underneath. The mouth was redder than ever, for the lips were scoured of fresh blood, which trickled from the corners of the deep mouth, and ran over the chin and neck. Even for the deep, burning eyes seemed yet almost swollen flesh, for the lids and pouches underneath were bloated. It seemed as if the whole awful creature was simply gorged with blood. He lay like a filthy leech, exhausted in his repletion. I shuddered as I bent over to touch him, and every sense of me revolted by the contact. But I had to search, or I was lost. The coming night might see my own body in banquet, in a similar way to those horrid three. I felt all over the body, but no sign could I find of the key. Then I stopped and looked at the Count. There was a mocking smile on the bloated face, which seemed to drive me mad. This was the being I was helping to transfer to London, where, perhaps, for centuries to come, he might, amongst the thronging millions, satiate his lust for blood, and create a newer and wildly ever source of semi-demons, or badden of the helplessness. Their very thought drove me mad. A terrible desire came upon me to rid the world of such a monster. There was no lethal weapon at hand. I seized the shovel that the workmen had been using to fill the chases, and lifting it high, struck it with the edging down at the hateful face. But as I did, the head turned, and the eyes fell upon me, with their blazing and basilisk horror. The sight seemed to paralyze me, and the shovel turned in my hand and glanced from my face, merely making a deep gash over my forehead. The shovel fell from my hand across the box, and I pulled it away from my flank, as the blade caught on the courage, at the edge of the lid, which fell over again, and hid the horrid thing from my sight. And last glimpse I was from the bloated face, blood-stained and fixed with the grin of malice, which would have held its own in the nethermost hell. I thought and thought that should be my next move, but my brain seemed on fire, and I waited with a despairing feeling growing over me. As I waited, I heard in the distance a gypsy song sung by merry voices, coming closer. And though the song is rolling of the heavy wheels and the cracking whips, the Scani and the Slovaks of whom the Count had spoken were coming, with a last look around the box of contained a vile body. I ran from the place and gained the Count's room, determined to rush out at the moment the door should be opened. With strained ears, I listened, and heard downstairs the grinding of the key in the great lock, and falling behind of the heavy door. There must have been some other means of entry, or someone had the key for one of the locked doors. Then there came a sound of many feet tramping and dying away in some passage, which sent a clanking echo. I turned and ran down again towards the vault, where I might find a new entrance, but the moment there seemed to come the violent puff of wind, and the door to winding stairs blew with a shock at the setting dust. From the lintels flying, when I ran to push it open, I found that it was hopelessness fast. I was again a prisoner, and the net of doom was closing round me more closely. I was right here, when the passage below was sound of many tramping feet, and a crash of weights being set down heavily, doubtless of boxes, with the fright of being earth, and the sound of hammering. It is the box being nailed down. Now I can hear the heavy feet tramping again along the hall, with many other idle feet coming behind them. The door shut, and the chains rattle. There is a grinding of the key in the lock. I can hear the key withdrawn, and another door opens and shuts. I hear the cranking of the lock and the bolt. Hark! In the courtyard and down the rocky way the roar of heavy wheels, and the cranking of whips, and the chores of Scani as they pass into the distance. I am alone in the castle, with those awful women. Faugh! Mina is a woman, and there is no of the common. They are devils from the pit. I shall not remain alone with them. I shall try to scale the wall further than I have yet attempted. I shall take some of the gold with me, lest I want it later. I may find a way from this dreadful place, and then away from home, away to the quickest and nearest train, away from this cursed spot, and from this cursed land, where the devil and his children walk the earthly feet. At least God's mercy is better than these monstrous, and principle is steep and high, and his foot a man may sleep as a man. Goodbye all. Mina. And that was chapter 4 of Dracula. We have many more chapters to go, so I hope that we can continue this story very soon. I hope all of you have enjoyed the stream. It has been a while, but I really enjoyed it myself. So hopefully, until soon. I'm going to be signing out for today. Thank you all for coming here and listen to me narrate. Have all a very nice Sunday. Juist, ik moest het nog even doortappen.